Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Vince Green.
And I'm your host, Noel John Tui.
This is Dark Side of the Moon. Let's get to it, motherfuckers.
Sticky topic.
There's no way home. All right, no, we're back. Sorry,
we barely got this recording off the ground because we had to Scooby-Doo this crap by making a bad joke. So
yeah, we're
sorry.
Yeah, we're back. We're not back alone. That's Will Johnson. Will, tell the folks here what to do. And this is Spider-Man No Way Home. And let's get to it, motherfuckers.
Yeah, let's.
I am the recording disruptor, bad joke maker.
I love the joke.
Co-host. Co-host of Cinephile Hissyfit Podcast. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook, making lots of friends by heavily criticizing their film opinions. And just pissing everybody off. It's fun. But yeah,
you're good at it.
I don't. Yeah, I know. I'm good at being annoying. So that's kind of my trait. So, but yeah, thank you for having me on to discuss. I'm gonna introduce the topic because why not? Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, I already beat you to the bin. I'm going, it doesn't matter. I introduced the segment. It's okay.
No one listens to you anyway.
Why run when you can crawl?
Or sling. But
hang around for more.
So we're fucking here to talk about the movie event of 2021.
It was.
You know what I mean?
Undeniably was.
Yeah, we wanted to let it get out in the world. We wanted to be able to talk freely about it without fear of spoilers. It's out now. It's being released, and here we are. Spider-Man: No Way Home. Like, this movie is just sheer joy. Like, oh my god! Like, it has everything. You got like Matt Murdock's introduction into the MCU, which like occurred like a week after I think Kingpin showed up in Hawkeye, and you have all three iterations of Spider-Man. It's just like, I can't think of a more ambitious solo movie in the past 10 years. It's incredible.
I can't think of anything that touched the soul. I just felt I felt like the kid me up to the now me. I just felt like it was something for every iteration of me. I just love that. Will, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say that the thing to me was, and this is why I think Marvel is so successful, is because, to be honest with you, I'm not like, when it comes to Marvel, I'm not really like a cynic or anything. I just thought, okay, you've got a 24 film Infinity Saga, in which you perfectly built up Thanos and built up this whole universe, where like a lot of the movies revolved around these Infinity Stones that you had no idea was going to come into play so much. And, not only did, Kevin Feige and company nail it, with the end of Infinity War, because we've seen a lot of films that, go off with a bang, a cliffhanger, and then they can't quite deliver. Endgame delivered everything you needed. It hit every emotional core. And what I was worried about after Endgame was like, how can they top this? Am I ever going to get another experience where I'm sitting in the theater and I'm on opening night, because I bought my tickets for Endgame like 40 days in advance, and I'm going to be sitting there crying and screaming, and it's like a sporting event where everyone's going nuts, and I'm like, can that feeling ever be replicated again? Or is it going to take at least another 12, 13 years? Or is it ever going to happen again? You know what I mean? And the fact that we got it, 3 years later, 2 years later with this, where, everyone's screaming, everyone's going nuts, everyone's seeing the film and wants to experience not just the movie, but experience that joy and that exhilaration of somebody just popping up on a screen, like I can't believe they did it again. Yeah. Only 2 years later. you know,
the scale. Yeah, no, the scale.
The fact that you could get so much out of a screening of a film like this that replicates, I won't say it undoes it. I won't say it betters Endgame, because Endgame was such a build up, not only in that year between Infinity War and Endgame, but the fact that they had built up to Endgame for 12 years or 10 years or whatever. But the fact that they could make something almost as, if not equal to, the amazement and the reaction from a crowd, and the fact that during a pandemic, people would still go and see this film like 700 times just to experience that joy is
like the numbers it reached. The numbers it reached were phenomenal.
And amazing Marvel is, in my opinion.
No, well, you know what I mean? Even if I was a Marvel naysayer, I'm not quite the Marvel fan that you are, because few people are, but I'm far from a naysayer. But it is hard to argue that if you can, now I know we were just kind of coming out of the pandemic, but if we weren't comfortable yet, there was still a lot of places had like only so much seating. But if you were able to clock up the numbers that this clocked up, you have to tip your cap to that. You could be that outlier who watched this film and hated it. I don't care. You have to tip your cap to that. That was an incredible feat. With this movie, this movie I felt like was tailor-made for me. I'm a big Spider-Man guy. And I loved all three. And the biggest thing for me, I think, by the time this film was over, is that we all loved Tobey Maguire. But a lot of people, like Andrew Garfield, I always thought was a great Spider-Man, and he was in a bad Spider-Man film, and it killed the franchise, and the rights reverted to Marvel. But he deserved more. Like, he deserved more, and this film actually gave it to him. And that was huge for me. And then, you know what? Why not? Why not just get all of the bad guys? If we're going to have all the Spider-Mans, why not have all the bad guys? And I just thought that should. And I actually felt like everyone felt a bit fleshed out. And that's so hard to do when you introduce such an ensemble of a cast. And I don't know where I'm finding fault in this film. And I'm glad that that's not kind of the question of the day, because
I agree. I think that there was only two characters, I think, that got a little bit of short shrift, and I think
Lizard and Sandman.
I think it was Lizard and Sandman, and they come from the more maligned Spider-Man films anyway, so I think people aren't too upset about it. But for the most part, I mean, like, I was watching a reaction video. There's this really cool gal who somehow doesn't get spoilers, and she reacts to all the Marvel films when they come out on digital.
From her bunker.
Any of this stuff. Yeah, she doesn't know anything. Yeah, I don't know how she does it, but she has these genuine surprises. And her biggest comment was, she was like, "Oh, I just thought Toby and Andrew would just show up for like a couple minutes." But the fact that they not only come out and have extensions of their storylines from their film universes, they get their own redemptions, they get their own sense of humor, like they get they actually play an incredibly important role in Tom Holland's development. Like, it's not just I think a lot of, we'll go to my second least favorite film of last year, Ghostbusters Afterlife, where it's just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. To me, I loathe that film because it was just callbacks, remember this and remember that, and isn't it cool that you can see this thing from the movie? Like, there was no organic heart with it. But like, the fact that, to me, the greatest part of this film is that what happens to Toby in his universe and what happens to Andrew in his universe actually plays a part in developing Holland's universe. Like, it's almost like a fate thing. Yeah, like when we talk about we were talking off the podcast about Nexus events and things like that, things that are like stuck in time. It's kind of like the Uncle Ben, and in this case, Aunt May, are these stuck events in time that have to happen to develop these heroes. And the fact that it took these two other Spider-Men to develop this Spider-Man was, I can't get enough of how almost seamless it is that they were able to take disparate, completely different, versions of Spider-Man and make them all combine into one. Because when you think about it, it would be just as bold if you had Cesar Romero, Heath Ledger, and Joaquin Phoenix in one movie as the Joker. Like, I'm not. They're not
as impressive because Heath Ledger's dead, but like
Heath Ledger was impressive.
No, what I mean is like the take on the characters are so disparate. You know what I mean? Like Toby is a completely different Peter Parker and Spider-Man than Andrew Garfield is, and Andrew Garfield is completely different Peter Parker and Spider-Man than Tom Holland is, and the fact that they can still make them exist in the same universe and make sense is such an amazing feat. I don't think people, I think I'm going to get on my Marvel soapbox, but so many people think that Marvel films are these assembly line productions that have no artistic craft to them. This is hard shit to do. This is hard to do.
To do right.
I mean, to do right.
But it's a pyramid system, isn't it? Like if something gives out underneath it, then it won't work. You have to get you have to give every single step right. This has to be, it is like, I mean, this is a crafted film. It's hard to take it away.
Well, and also unlike Ghostbusters Afterlife, people
didn't like, if I'm listening.
No, I hated it. It was next to Don't Look Up was my least favorite film of 2020.
Oh, that film is so silly. It's so fun.
But unlike that film, because Ghostbusters 2 is often maligned, Ghostbusters Afterlife basically pretends that movie doesn't exist. Like this movie, by accepting the fact that you have two bad Spider-Man films from Andrew Garfield, and even though I love Spider-Man 3, which a lot of people don't like, the fact is that they don't ignore them and incorporate them into the story shows the respect for the material. It shows the respect for those legacies. I mean, that is hard stuff to do, because it would be really easy to be like, well, people don't like Spider-Man 3, so let's just pretend it never happened. Or people don't like the Amazing Spider-Man films, let's not even have Andrew Garfield in this. No, they actually made those maligned movies better. By giving the characters arcs. I mean,
Electro, simple as Electro just encapsulate everything you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Amazing Spider-Man 1 is not a very good movie, because I think it's okay. I'm not a big fan, but I think that it was too close to Toby, and it was too much of a direct origin story for it to work. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is insane and stupid, at least has like this bizarre like insanity to it. Like the first 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes of that film are a comic book to me, and I think that's a success. It's not a very good comic book.
It's so corny though at times. That movie is so corny.
But the fact that they respect it enough to give it credence. I mean, the fact that Andrew Garfield's soul redemption arc in this is because of those movies. It pays tribute to them, even if people don't like them.
Him more than anyone.
I just think Marvel were like well prepared to make this movie. Like, look at what they've already done. They've already done like 4 Avengers movies at this stage. You got Captain America Civil War. Like, nobody does an ensemble cast like Marvel does, and nobody does ambitious movie making like Marvel does. And like, I think they were just so ready. And like, we already saw how positive the reaction was to Into the Spider-Verse only a few years ago, and people were primed and ready to see that. You know what I mean? Like, so everybody was like, we want to see a live action movie like this. We want to see the different iterations of Spider-Man and how that story can be told. And everyone thought it was impossible. And this is what Marvel do. They make the impossible possible time and time again. And they do like what Will says, they do it seamlessly. And like, they really do. Because like, they go, like, this is something that I always get infuriated at, this whole new trend of requels. They just go, oh no, I don't like Candyman 2 and 3. They don't exist anymore. No backsies. You know what I mean? Like, where Marvel are like, no, they do exist. We're going to take the best parts from those stories, and we're going to use the best parts, and then we're going to make fun of the worst parts. You know what I mean? And we're never going to ignore or shy away.
We'll find comedy in the bad, and we'll celebrate the good.
Yeah,
that's what they did. Comedy. Sandman not being able to seem to take his very human kind of form, and like he's sitting on the couch and he's trying to like dust off the guy. You know, it was small, but it was very, very funny.
Well, my favorite joke in the whole movie, I mean, it makes me laugh if I see it out of context or when I watch the movie. Nothing makes me laugh more than when Toby and Tom Holland are talking about fighting aliens, and Andrew Garfield's like, I fought a crazy Russian in a rhinoceros outfit. Like that is so fucking brilliant. Like that's exactly what you're saying, Noel. It's like they are taking something, and you know, they have the balls to do this, because think about it. Think about before Eternals came out, okay? The most hated in general, the most hated MCU film was Thor: The Dark World, right?
Yeah, or Incredible Hulk.
In terms of rating. If you go off Rotten Tomatoes, Thor: The Dark World had the lowest rating. It was like 61% or something.
Fuck Rotten Tomatoes.
They made that movie so essential to Endgame. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, you don't like this movie? Well, fuck you. You got to watch it anyway, because Endgame is going to have a 40-minute sequence with that movie in it. Like, they have the balls to, like you said, respect that material. Like, yeah, we didn't make a great movie, but you know what? We're still going to show you how important it is in the grand scheme of things. And I think that's amazing. Okay. That's why the fact that Andrew Garfield is in this at all. And it is to me, the MVP of the whole fucking movie. I mean,
same.
Yeah,
I think, I mean, he not only makes his films better, but like, well, first of all, I was talking about this on our podcast, the Oscar podcast. Every now and then you get an actor who is just in the zone. A couple years ago was Scarlett Johansson. She had Endgame, Jojo Rabbit, and Marriage Story, where it's just like anything she does. I mean, to me, like her performance in Endgame was the best Black Widow performance she ever did. Marriage Story, she was incredible. I thought she should have won. And Jojo Rabbit, she was incredible. Like, she was just in the zone. And Andrew Garfield right now is in the zone. Like, I mean, you could put him in, I made a joke on my podcast, you could put him in Happy Gilmore too, and he'd get an Oscar nomination. He's just in the zone, because he had Eyes of Tammy Faye, Tick, Tick, Boom, and this. And it's just like, he just has like this power right now. Like, he is so on fire.
Yeah.
And he really, I mean, the film's already great. And Toby's got his Tobyisms, which I think are great. He has some great lines of delivery in this one, like the Avengers. That's great. What is that? Like
is that bad?
He's got some great delivery, but the fact that Andrew like is funny, tragic, and sad, and gets a redemption arc, and like, you know, he steals the. I mean, he's so fucking good. And if that was on your bingo card for like Andrew Garfield would be the best part of a Spider-Man movie, like, I would have been like, no, there's no fucking.
He established himself as the funny one, didn't he? He was the slightly goofy, really likable, down on himself one, and
he's like, one thing that Andrew Garfield was in his two Spider-Man movies was he was not only the best thing about both movies, but he was also the heart and soul of both movies. Yeah. And it's something that, and he was like, even though I was like something about Tom Holland's like a puppy turned into human form, as I said before on the podcast, but like Andrew Garfield is the complete heart and soul of this movie, and it's like he has the real tragedy, losing a close. With Aunt May and Uncle Ben, but he felt like he was directly responsible for Gwen's death because he couldn't save her, whereas they weren't there really. Like Aunt May got taken out by Green Goblin when Spider-Man was down incapacitated, like, so it wasn't really his fault, you know what I mean? And like with Uncle Ben, he got shot when Tobey Maguire wasn't even there. So like when you had like Andrew Garfield's pure tragedy of him trying to actually save Emma Stone, and the fact that he got so close to saving her and she died, it was like his tragedy was almost amplified in comparison to the other two. And that's why I thought it was amazing that they gave him that redemption arc where he saves Zendaya, like her version of MJ, Michelle Jones Watson or something, isn't that her name?
Her name's Michelle Jones Watson in this one. Yeah. Well, and it's hard to beat. It's really hard to beat the classical nature of Tobey's Spider-Man, which is directly from the comics, which is tell me without, you know, he lets the robber go and it leads to the death. I mean, that to me is like stone cold classic storytelling. I mean, it's hard to beat that. Yeah. But the fact that, and another redemption arc that we don't talk about a lot is when Tobey stops Tom Holland from stabbing Green Goblin with the thing. Yeah, that is something that would not exist without the lessons he learned in that one. So it's like the other two Spider-Men get this redemption arc in a sense. I mean, Tobey definitely redeemed himself, obviously, by becoming Spider-Man, but you know, it's staying true to the characters. It wasn't just a dramatic beat. It was something that would make sense. Like, it would make sense that Tobey Maguire would stop Holland from killing a guy. It wouldn't make sense if Andrew did it, or if Tobey saved MJ. It was all very organic to the storytelling of those specific Spider-Man, which again is incredible because you're talking about Tobey Maguire films, which the last one was 2007. And Andrew Garfield, it wasn't too long ago, but I mean, by the time Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, the MCU was kind of becoming the cultural force it was, and it almost was forgotten.
And the Sony leaks as well at the time. So.
Yeah, so the fact that they could make you care and stay organic to that and affect the current storyline without it being schmaltzy crap is incredible to me. Like,
what we got to see was 3 different actors that not only gave us 3 different interpretations of the same character, but they've grown immensely since, like, even like Tom Holland has grown immensely as an actor since he first portrayed Peter Parker. But like, look at Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire has even taken a step away from acting and come back in more recent years, and like, he's changed as a human being. So his like, he was so laid back as Spider-Man. He looked so comfortable. It's like he found his favorite suit. He hadn't worn it in ages, and he just put it on. It was like, oh, it still fits perfectly. You know what I mean? How about that? That kind of thing. And like Andrew Garfield, because he had the more conflicted ending with Spider-Man, that I think just felt like a big sigh of relief. It's like, okay, here's my second chance. And that's it. It just fell true in his character. That was like his iteration of Peter Parker was the exact same as what Andrew Garfield must have been feeling going into that role. Here's my second chance. Here's my chance to redeem myself. Here's my chance to show people that I'm actually a good Peter Parker. I'm a good Spider-Man. Like, and I think with Tom Holland, it's like, here's my chance to mature as an actor and learn from these guys in the same way his Peter Parker is looking at and go, here's my chance to mature as a Peter Parker and a Spider-Man and learn from these 2 iterations of Spider-Man. So it's like the real world feelings that all the characters or the actors were feeling in these roles, I think is what made it so natural, because like every single thing that they were feeling when they were reprising the role or continuing on the role is like what they would have been feeling in real life, like their characters and their actors. And I think that's why it felt so natural. Like when you have Tobey Maguire come back, and he felt like he was just like happy to be there in the sense at the start, it's like, oh, how about that? I just walked through your thing here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and
what's everybody doing?
I think that one successful thing too is they didn't try to, I mean, like any time travel or multiverse thing, if you think too hard about it, it can start breaking your brain, because when exactly did these villains get transported back? Because I think they hint at like Doc Ock was like, oh, I was sinking in the ocean and suddenly I'm here, Like obviously, like, what about like how exactly did Green Goblin? There's some fuzzy science in it, but
I have to give my example. The photograph from Back to the Future. The photograph still gets taken exactly as it is, but whoever is getting deleted just starts to disappear from the photograph. Sorry, I just needed to get that out of my system. That's my one.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. But what I like about what they did with the Spider-Mans is, instead of like trying to make Tobey Maguire, I mean, he was already pushing whether he was a teenager or not in his film.
2001.
But they do make him kind of the elder statesman. And
oh my boy, look how you've grown or something. It's now, it says, or you're all growing up.
Exactly. And with Andrew Garfield, I mean, he is older. There is that weird line where Elektra's like, "You're just a kid," and Andrew Garfield's like, "Yeah, I'm 35." But
38.
The characters aged, which is really cool, because you would need, like, if it was Tobey being pulled out, in his first adventure, and Andrew being pulled out in his first adventure, they wouldn't have the knowledge or the wisdom to give Tom Holland what he needs. So I thought that was a brilliant move too, because we've all seen Marvel, like, Captain Marvel, they'll de-age Samuel L. Jackson. They've de-aged Michael Douglas 100 times in all these movies. Like, they could have easily gone that route, but they were like, no, let's just pretend that, it's kind of like, I always bring up Star Trek on this show, but like whenever when Star Trek was in its prime, right? You had Next Generation, and then Deep Space Nine started in year 6 of TNG, and then Voyager started sometime during DS9. It was like a flowing timeline. It was like, okay, from season 1 of TNG, from season 1 of TNG to the final season of Voyager, the years that go by in TV time are also the years that go by in the story. So, so from 1987 to 2005 or whatever the time is, whatever math that is, that's how much time passes in the Star Trek universe.
In and around 20 years.
Right. So the fact that they let Tobey Maguire age from 2007 to 2021 is benefiting the story, as opposed to trying to come up with some convoluted way that he's really still the Spider-Man from Spider-Man 3 or whatever. They did the same thing in the Spider-Verse movie. It's like you had the Peter Parker who's been divorced from MJ for like 15 years and is fat now. You know what I mean? It's like, it makes more sense that you would have like these aged characters, and I just think that's another brilliant touch that goes unnoticed.
You can like as well, the whole saying, we're the sum of our experiences. So like if you have a Tom Holland who's just like very, very, like, even though he's experienced these massive events as a Spider-Man, to be his own individual Spider-Man, like he wants to, not only does he himself want to get away from the thing of being like Iron Man's sidekick, but Marvel wanted to get Spider-Man away from being the whole Spider-Boy thing, the Iron Spider, all these things that kind of jumped his progression 5 or 10 years on. If you had him being introduced in 2008, they would have gone a whole different route. But because we're introduced him so late, and because Iron Man is like, in the final kind of chapters, his MCU experience, that they had to kind of go, we'll evolve Spider-Man quickly, and we'll have a trilogy, and everyone's like, looking, this is development. But really what the trilogy now fits as Spider-Man's origin story. You know what I mean? Because what they did at the end of No Way Home is they brought it back to the street level. Like, he's even wearing the same suits as Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. Like, you know what I mean? He's like he's gone back to, nobody knows who I am. I'm living in an apartment all by myself. He'll probably go get a job as a photographer in the Daily Bugle or something, and he's back to the classic Spider-Man suit, not these new modernistic interpretations or the Iron Spider suit that he's gone back to. He's gone back to what we would have assumed Spider-Man would be in Spider-Man 1,
That was one of the most frustrating discourses out there for me, was the fact that, like, well, this Spider-Man's just Iron Man Jr.
Yeah.
Now, what this movie does is, I would say, even though I don't think that's true, the fact that they've solidified the multiverse as this thing that can exist successfully, is it just, I think it put that to rest, because it was like, okay, it makes sense that this version of Spider-Man, who met Tony Stark, would be kind of an Iron Man Jr. because he lives in this specific universe. Like, just like the Tobey Maguire lives in a universe where the Avengers don't exist. Like, it makes sense. So I think it actually solidified, justified, and put a silence to those critics, because that always drove me nuts, because it was just like, well, he's not really Spider-Man, he's Iron Man Jr. But now it makes sense that he would be. He's got an Iron Spider suit, and he's got, he's living in a Tony Stark world. And now, and now he does have to start over. But unlike something like, let's say, The Last Jedi or the Rise of Skywalker or any of those, it feels like, instead of Marvel bowing and saying, okay, we've got to readjust Spider-Man because of this fan discourse, it's making it make more sense. Like, it's more genius storytelling, in my opinion, because it's them going like, yeah, maybe the fans don't like Iron Man Jr., so let's create this multiverse that makes it justified. And then now you don't hear those complaints anymore about that. I mean, every like attempt they've had to make, because there's always going to be mistakes or whatever, but every attempt they've had to make to fix something wasn't like a reaction to fans. It was more like realizing, we have to make this change. I mean, that's why Thor changed so dramatically from his first 2 movies and the first 2 Avengers movies, and then became kind of a whole different character, is because they embraced changes that needed to be made. They couldn't be the self-serious. I
think they embraced Chris Hemsworth as an actor, because he evolved.
Absolutely.
They realized, oh wait, shit, this guy's hilarious. He's not just like an Adonis or whatever the fuck. This guy is hilarious. He's been in movies in the meantime, and I think that's what served him so well. He was in the Avengers movies. He was in that much maligned Ghostbusters, the kind of the female remake with Melissa McCarthy and Christine Haig or whatever. Or is that her name? Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig. And but like I think in the meantime they saw what he can actually do as an actor, that he got the part of Thor because of how aesthetically he looks, and Kenneth Branagh was brought in because of his Shakespearean chops. And then when that's what you're going to get so he looked to go, okay, let's make him look good often. But even that, he did play, like, he did make fun of himself in Thor 1. He did get a few laughs from the audience, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And then,
no, I don't mind any of the Thor movies. I think they're all fun.
Yeah. Dark World I think Dark World just took itself a bit too seriously.
Yes, exactly. And so, but I guess my point is that just like with the Iron Man Jr. and just like with any other course correction they've made, it's always been it's service of the story first and not because of fan demands. I think that's what's doomed DC so much, and Star Wars especially has been doomed by that, is because, you know, they make Force Awakens and they get complaints about the original storytelling. I love Force Awakens. I don't care if it's a retread of New Hope. I went to see a Star Wars movie. I got a Star Wars movie.
It's definitely the best of the new trilogy.
And then they were like, let's make something completely different because the fans are demanding it. And then a lot of people hated it. So they made a completely soulless, just devoid of anything Rise of Skywalker. And because of the fan demands. And DC tried to do the same thing with Justice League. You know, they were like, we don't trust our creator's vision anymore. Trust me, I'm not defending. I don't like any of the. I don't really like the Snyder DC stuff. I like all of his other films. I liked Army of the Dead, by the way. Oscar-winning Army of the Dead.
Weird. Doesn't even sound right. But it's weird, but I allow it.
But you know, it's just like, I just think that every course correction they've made has been for the benefit of the storytelling, and it's brilliant. It's just Kevin Feige and all the creators there, as much as they're maligned as the death of cinema and that's not real filmmaking, the fact that they could put this together is just,
they saved cinema post-pandemic, especially.
Yeah, it needs to be respected. I hate when, you know, I read an article the other day where someone was like reviewing the new Moon Knight, and they were like, oh, it's really cool that Oscar Isaac's acting in this, because when you're in a Marvel film, it's not real acting. It's just kind of, you know, I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
man, Andrew Garfield nearly made me cry like 3 times during fucking Spider-Man No Way Home. I was like, stop it, Andrew! Stop hitting me in the field, you motherfucker!
and it's almost like people forget, like, movies, like, first of all, and here's another thing, because I'm reading a lot of history right now about old Hollywood, like 1940s, 1930s Hollywood right now. And people forget, like, movies back then were driven by 2 things: star power and assembly line productions.
Oh, of course.
Studio systems.
Studio contracts.
They made almost 600 films a year in the studio system in the 40s, because they were just like, let's get it out. Here's the director, throw it at him. We had script writers that were like writers' rooms. They would just write scripts every day and then just throw them out, and people would assemble them together. It was assembly line. Marvel is an old school studio. They pump out content,
long deals, 6 movie deals, 8 movie deals, 9 movie deals, stuff like that.
Just like a lot of the old studios, just like the Warner Brothers that everyone holds in such high regard, they were, first of all, any executive back then will tell you made it for the money first, and then they made it. But the other thing it's almost like art persevered despite that, because the other thing that they nurtured was star power. Like, if you're telling me that Robert Downey Jr., who I think might be the last true charismatic movie star, you know, because I mean, in the old school tradition, because it got to the point where it was like, yeah, he is almost like this character, like it's almost like his life.
Yeah.
Like, people loved Iron Man. They loved him so fucking much that they made a C-level comic book character the most ubiquitous cinematic superhero of all time.
The backbone of the Infinity Saga, like, pretty much.
And that's because of his acting ability. Like, and I think Spider-Man taps into that too. It goes, man, Tobey Maguire was so damn good as Spider-Man. Like, and Andrew Garfield was definitely like this hidden gem amongst these bad movies, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, they emphasize that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I think, despite the fact that, yes, they want to make money, it seems like there's always this either or argument. It's like, it's because someone's just like, well, I read something on Twitter the other day where someone was like, someone was mad at remakes. Two of my favorite films last year were remakes: West Side Story and Nightmare Alley. I don't care if they're remakes.
Nightmare Alley's
as long
a
as it's
remake.
good storytelling. Yeah, Nightmare Alley was originally a film in 1947. But someone was like, well, we want more original content. Why do we want Marvel release number 40? And I'm like, do you want them to just release that or make money? Or their argument was basically like either or. Like, they either want to, Marvel's either there to make money or you get real films. And I'm just like, why can't it be both? Why can't they be artistic and make money? Like, that's what some of the Oscar films of yesteryear were doing. Titanic was a massive success. It's an artistic film, but it's also a commercial film. The Exorcist was a film that could not be denied despite the fact that it's horror at the Oscars, because it made $900 trillion, but was also, you know what I mean? Like,
it's a masterpiece.
It's almost like people forget that, like, it's okay to want to make money and make art at the same time. I mean, maybe there's somebody like a David Lynch out there, or maybe like a Gus Van Sant who's purely an auteur who just wants to make art their way, but they're never going to make any money. They're literally going to be supported by people that want the prestige. But find me any director that doesn't want to make like, they don't want to show work to the world, for God's sake, and make some money while they're doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's no such thing as a
that's your business.
artist.
That's the business.
Yeah. I just think the issue people have with superhero movies is the spandex, the bright colorful suits, whatever. They can't look past and look at, like, some of the biggest social commentary that was done throughout the past 40 years was in comic books through superhero movies or through superhero stories. Sorry, with like the right, civil rights with the X-Men and stuff like that. Throughout the years, they've always looked at what society was doing, and that always influenced the stories of back then, in the same way it influences the stories now. There's always so much more depth to superhero movies than what they're given credit for, and a lot of the depth is actually provided, I think, by the villains. And one thing this movie had more than any other superhero movie was a fucking wide berth of villains, and with William Dafoe, of course, absolutely stealing the show. We always say a strong superhero movie tends to have a strong villain. Who's your favorite out of this? It has to be William Dafoe for me.
I don't think we can get into a topic of debate on that. William Dafoe, they got rid of the mask as well they should, but why have a head like William Dafoe's? And,
look at his face.
And also, it was just such a wide angling arc. He was deceptive. He was tortured. He kind of got to use the full kind of 3 dimensions that was the actual Green Goblin. It was, if anything, he finally did his character right. So no, Green Goblin hands down.
Well, and I love of the Tobey trilogy. I love the first Spider-Man the best. I know a lot of people go for 2. I go for 1. And I think Willem Dafoe's the best part of that movie. However, there is a little bit of a disconnect, unlike the comics, because especially with the Gwen Stacy thing in the comics, like, Green Goblin is such a personal villain to Spider-Man. And I don't think we necessarily got that in the first Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire. What this film does, and this is why it's also brilliant that it's multiversal, is it makes Green Goblin almost more sinister and evil than it did in the first one, because he kills Aunt May. It's like, holy shit. Like, they tried to do that in Spider-Man 3 by having Sandman have some kind of responsibility for Uncle Ben's death, which is ridiculous. But this one takes that character. Yeah, that one takes this character, and already a great villain, and makes him even more villainous. And like, it's just amazing that worked. I mean, that's another storytelling.
One thing I loved about
genius.
One thing I loved about it was that they took a Tobey Maguire villain and almost made him more of a Tom Holland villain.
Yeah.
They 100% did. They didn't just do it, 100% did.
It's his greatest villain that he's ever come across.
They gave him his Uncle Ben moment.
Yeah.
Somebody gives you your Uncle Ben moment. They're your nemesis. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's the most personal villain he's had through all his experiences in the Avengers, because usually his the first villain was kind of incidental, because he was just trying to stop crime. And the second villain, like, it was even more incidental because his connection with Tony Stark is the reason he kind of got in the crosshairs of Mysterio. So this was the first time he really had a personal villain, because even when he combated Thanos, it's a global event. Of course, he's going to get involved. So everybody's getting involved, you know. So this was the first time that we really saw a villain take something from him. Well, Mysterio did in a way, because he took his anonymity from him. So that was kind of his, like, the final blow. But like, to see his progression with Green Goblin and Willem Dafoe, that he almost killed him. Like, you know, Willem Dafoe killed Aunt May. They had that fucking amazing fight scene in the apartment building. Even though there's all these other villains in it, that Tom Holland and his central story was focused more around Green Goblin. And that's what I loved about it, that they shifted the attention from him being a Tobey Maguire villain and having him being the central antagonist of the entire piece. It was absolutely genius.
Before we finish up, just let's say this: was it everyone's film of the year of the 2021?
Film event of the year.
Film event of the year.
Film event for sure. I ranked it on my top 10 for 2021. I ranked it 4th.
Yeah.
I went West Side Story number 1 because it was the return of Spielberg, and Spielberg is just a legend. I went Nightmare Alley.
Never heard of him, but okay.
Yeah, I went. You wouldn't have in the last 10 years because he's only made middling kind of things. But I went Nightmare Alley number 2, and I actually went Shang-Chi number 3 because Shang-Chi was more personal to me.
Yeah.
Spider-Man is personal to me as well, but like, I just really connected with the Shang-Chi story. Plus, it had my favorite acting performance of the year, my favorite scene of the year, which was the fight in Ta Lo at the beginning between the future husband and wife. It had some Jackie Chan level fights in it, like, you know, in the bus. So I put, in terms of pure enjoyment, not being reactionary, like right at this moment, like if you asked me to pick between the two Marvel films, I'd put Shang-Chi on right now just because it's more my style. But I put Spider-Man number 4 for sure. And I have been a big advocate, you know, no matter how many times people laugh at me, like I've been fighting for its Oscar recognition all year. Like I've been like, it should be a Best Picture nominee. I'm sorry. That's the essence of cinema. That's the essence of movie making.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, before we get the fuck out here, though, do you want to do a quick what if and best and worst, and we go? Like,
sure.
Let's make them quick. Let's quick fire them.
Good. Well, what would you have changed if you were the director of the Spider-Man movie, No Way Home?
One is I would have liked, because as someone who hates the Venom comic book character but loves the movies, nothing got me more excited than seeing Tom Hardy in this. And I was like, oh, great, he's going to be in it. He's going to be in the next one. And then he disappears. So I would have, obviously there's a little piece of Venom there.
Yeah.
But I would love to have seen Tom Hardy interact with Tom Holland. That would have been my, even if it's just a throwaway scene, just give me,
I think
talk about building up your expectations by Tom Hardy going, maybe I'm going to go to New York and talk to this Spider-Man. And then suddenly he's gone. I'm like, what the fuck? You gave me the next movie. Like, so that would be my what if. And, that's as far as
I think Tom Hardy's probably going to exist in either Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire's universe, and they're going to reboot one of those. So, Noel, what's your what if? I'll just give mine super quick so we can get onto you, Noel. As my what if would be that I was kind of hoping they'd go full bore Sinister Six, and they never really did. And that kind of just fucking bugged me. Unless you count the tree. We're going to count the tree. I think we'll count the tree. But one thing we didn't actually talk a lot about is how big the movie was as well. Is like Doctor Strange was fucking all over this fucking movie. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, like, you know what I mean?
Kind of like the Iron Man, isn't he? He's the guy that you can bounce off.
The new mentor.
But he can also make the impossible possible.
How about you, know what's your what if?
My what if would be, I suppose I would have liked if it had been a little bit more visceral. Like, it was kind of a very PG-13, and of course this film was always going to be, but I think when there was that many people let loose, that there could have been even more catastrophic kind of turnout from it. And I suppose I would have been there for it, because I would have even like a soft Die Hard levels of kind of consequence in it. But like the Aunt May thing obviously gets you well beyond the finish line if that's what you need from a movie. But I would have liked a little bit more from it, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, cool. So best and worst, Will and Noel, how many we get to go here?
Best Green Goblin. No, sorry, best Andrew Garfield's redemption arc, because I just thought the actor deserved. Willem Dafoe is adored. He's bigger than any of this. And worse, you know what? Like, I mean, I think there's only so many minutes of the film, no matter what you do. But I think I do have to relent to the point that for like a complex character like Lizard could have probably been fleshed out a bit more. Like Sandman fell into a thing and became a thing, and I didn't need too much about it. But again, there's only so many minutes in a movie. But to be fair, he said it, and in my head it clicked. It's been true. They could have done a bit more.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx has that great line. He's like, "Gotta watch where you're falling," because he falls into a vat of eels, and
the other guy falls into a matter or something or other.
Yeah, there's nothing more comic book than Sandman being like, "Oh, I fell into a super collider." It's like, what the fuck? Like, no, I echo that in terms of the what am I doing again? Am I doing the
best and worst? Keep it snappy. Yeah.
Best would be just all three Spider-Men talking on the Statue of Liberty. I mean, just any scenes with that, I just relish and enjoy. Worst, I'm going to say, some of the CG was a little, but that always seems to be the case. I think they spend more of their money on the cast than the technical, but there is still some brilliant stuff. But I can see why people complain sometimes about the overglot of CG. There are a number of scenes in here where it's just like, I'm not watching human beings. I'm watching polygons and ones and zeros. And I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me. I don't think that's the end of cinema, but sometimes you can kind of feel when it's a little oversaturated.
Yeah, for me, my best would be Willem Dafoe, and the worst I think would have been they softened the villains a bit too much too soon. That they could have held back a little bit in that and actually had them being a bit more villainous. Even though we did get to see that awesome battle scene at the Statue of Liberty,
exactly,
it always felt like they were only moments away from becoming kind of anti-heroes or good villains for that kind of thing. The redemption arc was the most obvious part of the movie for me. And I think they softened the villains a bit too much. And at the same time, Willem Dafoe was the best part about it, even though like he's one of the villains. But like apart from that, I think that's the only issue I really had with the movie was
nicely done.
They softened the villains a bit too early on. So let's get the fuck out here, Will. I know you're short on time, so I think Noel's short on time too. So we're all short on time. We're all short on time. We're all busy, man.
Motherfuckers. Is that what you guys say? Motherfuckers.
We do.
All right, folks. I'm your host, Vince Green.
I'm your host, John Toohey.
This is Dark Side of the Moon, and that's Will Johnson. That's Spider-Man No Way Home. See you next time, motherfuckers.
Peach.
I'm a god, you're a madman. This is the word of Darkseid.